welcome to CHGO Red Stars Podcast, presented to you by PointsBet. Download the PointsBet app today and sign up with code CHGO to get your first 2 bets risk-free up to $2,000. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER for crisis counseling and referral services. Look, whenever I need to lean on somebody, I just call on my friend, homie, and colleague.
Here we are.
Claire Watkins, aka the scam originator. Me and Claire Watkins and Sandra Herrera coming at you once more to chat all things CHGO Red Stars. And honestly, listen, y'all. You're joining us live. You're getting authenticity here.
Yeah.
And we cannot lie to you.
Oh, yeah.
The energy is not great. I wish we had a little bit more enthusiasm, wish we had a little bit more, but it's an interesting time in the CHGO Red Stars season here.
Yeah.
Because it's the last match weekend of NWSL regular season 2022. And while it's a very, very exciting time for neutrals, for those of us who go here, it's a little bit nerve-wracking. This is unfamiliar territory for the Red Stars. They're going into this final match week. Yes, of course, needing to win, right? That is kind of the energy.
Yes.
But they also need other things around them to help them out.
Well, as you were speaking, I was thinking to myself, I was like, is this the first time they've had it go down to the last weekend? That's actually 2014, right?
Yep.
2014 was the year that they had to go down to the final weekend, and they drew with the Western New York Flash 3-3, as we all recall, or 2-2 to 3-3, and they did not make it in to the playoffs. They came all the way to the end and did not make the top 4. Now that's very different than a top 6, but
it's been also 2014. There's literally one person on the team who could probably talk about what that felt like.
Yeah, no, it's been So now 8 years later, we're kind of back in a similar position.
Yeah. So I guess we should ask Vanessa DiBernardo specifically.
Yeah.
How does it feel? How does
Right.
it compare to 2014?
Yeah.
And 2022, sort of being in this position where you need lots of other outside factors to sort of assist you along the way. Let's maybe chat a little bit about how the Red Stars got here, perhaps alluding to most specifically that previous loss against Portland Thorns. And I got to say, I feel like when we were on here last week and we were talking about making this preview around the Thorns, how they were going to go on the road, and some of the energy that we've had is like, hey, actually, the playoffs have started already,
right,
for the Red Stars, and kind of felt like that internet meme where it was like the stick figure poking something with a stick, where it was like, okay, do something. Like the sort of storylines and sort of the narrative that's been coming out of media availabilities, in terms of the players and the coaching staff is one game at a time.
Yeah,
and you can only take the game in front of you. And while that's a true fact, another thing that can be true is that like a certain level of urgency is needed at a certain time of the season.
Go time.
Right.
Yeah, a certain level of urgency is needed at a specific time of the season. And for a club that has sort of always known and sort of always had the mentality like, hey, like we know that the very long regular season comes down to like the last 4 weeks or so.
Right.
I think we were anticipating a certain type of energy from this team, and we saw like a 4-1 win against Louisville. We saw a big blowout against Kansas City, and then it was like, okay, well maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Kansas City result, I mean, you look at it, right? So they tie the Reign, they get the big Kansas City result, but then they lose to Houston.
Yep.
And they lose to Portland. And the Portland game, like we'll get into the details of that. It was just a bad loss.
Bad game.
And so you're like, okay, was that Kansas City game like a false hope situation? Was it just weird enough circumstances that Malpew was a little bit more rested than everybody else, and so she was able to kind of do her thing? I don't know. It's kind of hard to gauge, but again, you talk about this stretch of all these playoff teams that they're playing, and to be frank, this game against Angel City could get eliminated tonight. So that's not even necessarily going to be against a playoff team, but they've done okay. They've done fine. There is just still this issue of, it does feel sometimes like they're whole point space is on teams below them in the table, and the other teams that they're supposed to be competitive with, they just can't get over the top with. And so then you get to this Portland game and you see the wheels kind of come off.
Oh, yeah.
And you go, okay, so just the physical exertion or mental exertion or emotional exertion of even competing.
Yeah.
Like, what has that brought to this team?
Yeah.
And what do they even have in the tank for this final game? Should it even matter? So I don't know. It's a tough place to be.
You know, we were talking about this team going to Portland, and look, I'll call it out. I remember specifically during the preview of this Thorns game and talking about it and saying, listen, you know, in my opinion, in Sandra's opinion, that the Red Stars going up against the Thorns looks and feels a little bit different than in early years. Mm-hmm. Early years of NWSL, like there was a long stretch of time at, let's say, 8 years or so where, you know, the Red Stars going up against the Thorns, it was like an automatic dub. Mm-hmm. I think if you were Portland, you know, it was like they just knew, they just had their number. And then in more recent years, it looked a little bit and felt a little bit different, you know, that this was a Portland Thorns side that has now been eliminated twice by the Chicago Red Stars in the postseason during a semifinal. They had played to a 2-2 draw earlier, that it looks and feels a little different. But when this game happened and its conclusion was reached, I was like, well, that's embarrassing for me. We had a 3-0 scoreline, and while maybe that's not considered a blowout, it is lopsided. But it was everything else that sort of came out, or everything else that was sort of a consequence of this loss. Right. I mean, we're talking about a loss that featured, you know, a really good look on goal from Mallory Pugh, who then all of a sudden pulled up and kind of removed herself out of play for a little bit, for about, what was it, a five-ish minute stretch of time. Yep. Just sort of feeling out her leg and sort of, you know, making sure that she was all right, so to speak. And then you've got that, right? That's an issue with your star player that you're keeping an eye on. And then you see this team go into the locker room at halftime 0-0, and you're thinking, well, okay, a little bit of some chaotic energy there, but we saw the return of Morgan Gautrat getting a start, right? We've seen her building her minutes, and this one included an actual start. Yeah. And maybe we can also talk about that a little bit. I mean,
the first half wasn't bad, How
different does that midfield box look like when you've got somebody like a Gautrat at your disposal? Thought they looked great.
Yeah, I thought so as well. I mean, I think, again, this is just sort of trying to determine. We got back into this. This lineup looked very different. The starting 11 looked very different. And
want me to run it down for you?
I mean, we can. I mean, just to sort of to go into the points of change, right? Which is that Gautrat gets the start in the defensive. Nair,
obviously holding things down in net. Tatum and Lazo, Zoe Morris, Aaron Wright. Holding things down in sort of that back three. We had Jill Aguilera get a start, Danny Colaprico, Morgan Gautrat, Bianca St. George's, Mallory Pugh, Vanessa DiBernardo, and Yuki Nagasato. So starting 11. So
first of all, Rachel Hill was hurt, and she was not on the availability report. So we didn't really know exactly why Aguilera got the start, but it's because Rachel Hill has a hip issue that was not on the AR. And then we also saw the midfield kind of shift around a little bit. Vanessa DiBernardo goes back to playing an attacking midfielder. Gautrat and Colaprico play together in the defensive midfield. Like I said, I thought the first half they did a really nice job actually of controlling possession. Yeah. But that was not the issue. The issue is how do you turn controlling possession into chances on goal? Now, Chris Petroselli has said that the reason to have Yuki pushed forward into this number 9 role is to get as many of what he considers to be the team's best playmakers on the field. And I get that to a certain extent, but I don't understand that as an attacking, and it's just sort of the way they're approaching the attack. But while fully understanding, we've seen a little bit of fading from Ava Cook. We've seen, I think, Ella Stevens, you know, she can't play every single. It doesn't seem like she can play every single game. Maybe she can, and it's not a fitness issue. I don't know why they're not just kind of sticking with one player in that role. But if it was a tactical change to sit Stevens for Nagasato, I don't know what chances are generated by that, essentially. Yeah. And I think we saw that in the first half of that game, which was very competitive.
Yes, I wouldn't call it even, but I would say I would agree with you in that it was competitive. I do think there were a couple really good moments, specifically in the final third for Portland, where maybe they could have had an earlier goal. But that just wasn't the case. I've said it throughout this season, and we've always alluded to it before in the past. But if there's something that the Red Stars have been good at is being organized, right? That's often a compliment that's given to this team from other oppositions across the league. It's like, hey, like Chicago's a tough team to break down. They can be very organized at time, and that's something that we saw a lot of, I think, in that first half, even when there were maybe moments of some good looks for Portland in that first half. But I think if you're on the road and you're going up against a team that has typically gotten your number, and at this point, the Thorns are pretty much in, the team that's mainly been in first place for the last couple of weeks. You got to say, I'm sure you're telling yourself in halftime, like, okay, we're where we want to be. It's 0-0. We've got one half under our belt.
You think maybe you can get a point out of this? That's not that bad. That's not bad. Yeah, right.
Let's stay the course, right? Like we're where we want to be. Let's keep gunning for a result here on the road. And then, I mean, this second half, man, it just, I don't ever envision myself using like the word choke and coming to like the Chicago Red Stars, because that's just not something that I think we've ever necessarily seen from this team. But we definitely saw the wheels fall off in the second half of this game. There was a bit of implosion, quite frankly. I think that happened.
That's not normal for this club.
I mean, I don't want to say that it's not normal. I just think that like any team has the ability to sort of feel the pressure sometimes. And it just felt like when Portland got this very early goal in the second half, it just sort of felt like all of a sudden the pressure hit. And we just saw Portland run away with this second half.
Yeah, I mean, they completely. I'm just like, I'm almost speechless.
She agrees.
Yeah, I'm like running out of words. I mean, I think, right. So a couple of things happened. The number one is Portland scores right away out of halftime. Not unusual for them. They did the same thing to Louisville. No, not to Louisville, but to whoever they played at the last week. And forgive me for not remembering, but they're very good. The pressures of containing that attack, I think, can get to you. What we saw in that first half is we saw Chicago be able to possess in the midfield, but the moment that Portland was able to go forward, it was immediately very dangerous. And I think that can be really stressful for the back three. And then, I mean, we saw, obviously loss of composure from BSG, right? She, for a throw-in. And, like, to be fair, like, I remember the Houston game last week, like, the ARs do get this wrong a lot, to be fair. The thing that is sometimes, I think, a little bit hard to see on the streams are the little things that the refs get wrong. So you might see, like a missed penalty or something like that, but it's always like handballs that weirdly do not get called if they're in the middle of the field, or the out of bounds, like both teams just getting so frustrated because they never think the out of bounds call is correct. Or you see offsides calls that to the attacking field, the attacking player or the defensive player feel wrong at times. So it's a frustration, and that felt a little bit carried over from the Houston game as well, because I think that my takeaway from that is that the players, or at least St. George, held more animosity towards the refereeing of that match than maybe we realized, because that was very influenced by the ARs.
I don't think that's unfair to bring up.
And so she loses her cool. And I mean, that is a red card any day of the week.
Oh yeah.
And that's rough. And that kind of was the beginning of, okay, so you've got everybody just trying to hold on here. At this point, it's only 1-0. And then immediately Portland goes and scores again.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, great. So this is what's happening now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, gosh, again, you hate to see it, but it just, you saw the two very different in-game. I'm talking in-game. I'm not speaking in generalities here. You just saw two very different in-game mentalities.
Yeah.
In this moment, especially during, as the game was approaching the hour mark. I think that's, again, not unfair. It's just the fact that you brought up that at this point, the game. It's 1-0. Like there's still a game
Right.
to chase here with a lot of time left, and you have a very unfortunate moment happen where a team, the Red Stars go down a player. You're down a player. It's a player advantage for Portland, and if you're going up against the number one first place ranked team on the table with an attack that has players like a Morgan Weaver or Sophia Smith or somebody like a Yasmin Ryan who has had a phenomenal second half of a season, or Christine Sinclair, a veteran, right? She's 39 years old and has probably scored some of the most goals of her career against the Red Stars specifically. Like it's already a tough scenario to go up against, and then you are down a player for a very lengthy amount of time in the game.
Well, and I don't think that second goal was about the player advantage. I think it was just because the rest of the players for the Red Stars were just like, what just happened?
What the hell just happened?
What just happened? Yeah, that wasn't about a player advantage. That was purely just like mentally, how do you even regroup from? I'm sure for them, if you didn't see it, if you didn't see St. George give the double finger
bird,
salute, then you would just be like, literally, what just happened? And then you're like, oh shit, we got to like keep playing a soccer game.
Yeah, there's no time to process that moment.
Yeah, right.
As to what just happened. And I mean, you had the goal that takes place, Morgan Weaver.
Yeah.
And Morgan Weaver gets her second one, and Sophia Smith helps orchestrate that. But you're also talking like minutes after that, like you get Zoe Morse who picks up her first yellow in this game. Yeah. Right. And you could just sort of see the timestamps and the timeline of events in which there was that kind of implosion, where there was that kind of perhaps that break in the game plans. We'll just say plural at this moment. And then I guess you're down 2-0 and there just wasn't, I hate to be this way, but there just wasn't enough to sort of kind of, be able to spearhead a comeback, let alone one goal, but let alone two goals down now.
Yeah, once that second, to come back down a
player.
And it's like you're talking about a goal that happened, like I said, at the 61st minute, right at the hour mark, and there's still technically a good chunk of game left, and it's like if you've got enough in you, if you got enough within your attack to sort of try to like go after a result, like is it always possible within those scenarios? Sure, of course, but at this point you're down a player, you're down 2 goals. Malpew is only Malpew, and I just was looking for any different adjustments within this game to sort of counteract these scenarios that presented themselves in this game, where it's like, okay, down a player, so we have to shift and maybe do this. Just not really seeing that out of this game. And I mean, when you're looking at sort of the final numbers of this, the Red Stars recorded 1 attempt on target,
and it was the rocket. It was the Pew rocket in the first half.
It was Malpew's like, I'm gonna do it myself. Opportunity.
Yeah,
and congrats to Pew. She's been playing on like X Games mode like this second half of the season.
Right.
But again, like this is one player amongst many, and to sort of, I guess, add salt into this already kind of lost cause at this point in this game, the Thorns go ahead and they get another goal, and this goal comes after Zoe Morse picks up a second yellow.
Right.
And so now she makes her exit from the game.
That sucks. I feel really bad for Zoe Morse.
I do too. That moment more than any other moment in the game sucks.
Cosmically unfair.
Yeah.
She has been doing everything the club has asked of her.
Yep.
She's moved into this central-most center back role after 2 other defenders go down. I spoke to Morse about for a different piece a couple weeks ago, and just the mental fortitude to go from not playing at all last season to suddenly being relied on so heavily to make everything work this year. And I think she's done a really nice job with, again, I say very little help. I don't mean that in that, like, obviously Tatum Mulatto has been fantastic, and Kowalski and Wright have done a nice job as well, but it's more just like in the nature of a 3-back, you are asked to do so much on your own. Yeah. And Morse, I mean, that to me, I was just like, that is a player that's been let down.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think when you're like looking at, I appreciate you for like wanting to clarify that, but I got what you meant. Like the support for a player in like for someone specifically like Morse, you have to maybe call into question a little bit, because we're it's like we saw this player get drafted and then not see any time whatsoever, as Claire's already alluded to, and then all of a sudden in 2022 she's the starter in what's going to be the Red Stars' new system moving forward. And it's just like the mental hurdles that an athlete probably has to go through to being asked one very specific thing in like an earlier phase of your season, and then being asked of another very specific thing in the middle phase of your season, and then a third very high pressure scenarios is another thing entirely. And it's I hope that Morse has felt supported in this season, or has the adequate things in place to be able to support an athlete like through those moments. I agree with you. It did feel cosmically unfair. I think more than the BSG red card, it was like, no way, man. It was like, you just hate to see it. And it was a loss that, unfortunately, because of all of those things, it was a loss that felt bad. It felt,
I think this was sort of what I saw online as it was happening too, is like, it's interesting because we are going to get to the point where we talk about how Chicago's season is not over. And in fact, we could be talking about a playoff team right now. Yeah. Though if Chicago does make playoffs, BSG will not be playing in that quarterfinal. She got a second game suspension, which is in line with what Amber Brooks got for the same thing.
Correct.
But it felt like a season ender.
Yep.
It felt like, again, it wasn't, but that is absolutely how it felt. And everybody remembers the Portland disaster of 2021, right? But that was the first game of the season.
The first game of the season.
And we saw a change within the team from there. To have this happen in your second to last game, I don't know. It is something where you're like, you want playoffs for the team, but you're also just like, there are so many issues here that have not been resolved that, do we also want playoffs?
I don't know. I don't know at this point.
Do we want them to play Portland like again?
It felt like, I'll just be frank here. With the offseason that the Chicago Red Stars had, all of the horrendous headlines around the franchise.
Yeah.
Their months-long zero dark 30 energy.
Yeah.
And all of that, leading up to this season, to the point where Petroselli is not named head coach or hired until well into the preseason, right? It just sort of felt like the storylines around this team was that like they were going to have a hellscape of a season, and unfortunately that just hasn't been quite true because of the players. This year the players have put together a very respectable season, and depending on who you talked in the space, probably consider this team to have overperformed this year. So it almost sort of felt like all of those feelings about like, oh, this season's going to be a hellscape, all came within one game in this Portland Thorns game. And it was like, oh, the Red Stars season actually didn't feel like this at all, technically. But here it all is kind of in this loss of this game.
The fears of just like what this could be.
What it could mean. Right. So it means technically that there is one more home game for the Chicago Red Stars. And look, if you're a local, if you're here, you go here and you have the chance to see the Chicago Red Stars, chance to see Malpew on expert mode.
Big game,
you can get a ticket to the game.
Let me just say,
that's going transition,
back,
baby.
Yeah,
it's game time transition.
Game time transition. Do you have the copy pulled up?
I do have the copy.
Okay, good.
Because
you transitioned too well. I wasn't ready.
Because if you want to grab a ticket, if you love CHGO, then you'll love Game Time. The best way to support us is by buying your tickets through the link in the description here of the episode. Join over 15 million people who have downloaded the Game Time app and score the best seats to all of your favorite events. So if you don't know, Game Time is the hottest new ticketing site that makes it easier than ever to score the best deals on tickets to sports, concerts, and shows. So look, with one more game left, there are still seats remaining against Angel City. You're going to want to grab your tickets through Game Time. To go
a lot of cool options here. We're looking at it on the YouTube stream here.
Yep, you can get real up close and personal.
You could sit there.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, like,
if you want to hear me and Claire from the press box, you could sit on that opposite side.
Yeah, and we'll hear you too. If you sit in front of the press box, we can hear you.
We can absolutely hear you. check it out. Check it out.
And use that link below the YouTube stream.
That's
that
right.
helps us out a lot here at CHGO.
Yep, click through. If you're getting tickets, and please do. Like, if you're in the area and you want to see a game that matters, and you want, at the very least, this is a fan appreciation night. It's a really, again, we're talking about the things that are disappointing, but there is an element of job well done, I think, at the end of this season for the players that did what they did this year. And then, so this game coming up.
Setting up, Portland sets up some interesting scenarios.
Yeah.
There are a lot sets up some interesting scenarios going into this final game because, look, this is a Chicago Red Stars show, and everyone who's joining us, again, welcome if you're coming in after that ad read. But this is the last one, and you're here for the Red Stars, but in order to know what's going on with the Red Stars, we got to give you the context of what's on the line in this weekend. And there's a number of things on the line this weekend.
Yep.
So we've got the standings here in front of you. Portland sitting at number 1 with 38 points. So Reign in number 2 with 37 points. Kansas City Current, 3rd place with 36. San Diego Wave, 35 points in 4th. And then the 2 playoff spots that are actually up for grab this weekend are 5 and 6. And right now, it's Houston Dash in 5th place with 33 points. And North Carolina punching their way into the upper half of the table in 6th place with 31 points. So just outside is the Red Stars in red there with 30 points, and Angel City in 8th place with 29 points. So what's at stake here? The Red Stars can try to manifest a playoff berth here, but they need some things to also go their way.
Need some help.
Color me wrong if I'm wrong, but I do think North Carolina is going to win tonight. San Diego has some injuries, some serious. I don't want to freak anybody out. They have some injuries to serious players. I don't want to call the injuries serious without knowing, but they have some injuries to some very important players. And I think that they're probably mostly focused on just getting into their playoff game as intact and as possible. And I think North Carolina is going to come out just ready to roll. So I do think that North Carolina is going to make the playoffs. It's winning in, which means that Red Stars fans will simply become huge Washington Spirit fans tomorrow, because what they need is Houston to lose, and it would help if Houston lost by multiple goals. Because Chicago would need to obviously win to go level with Houston on points, and then they would have to make up what is right now a negative 3-goal differential against the Dash. We'll see if that happens. The Dash also are trying to make the playoffs, so they're going to come in with a lot of energy, I would think. So any points by Houston, and this is a dead rubber match at the end of the weekend, which is tough. I mean, it's tough for the fans to go through. I'm sure it's tough for the players to go through. We've heard all season that the Red Stars, their mantra has been, we can only focus on ourselves. We can only, handle our own process. But the issue when you don't handle your own process is that you do have to rely on other people. And so,
that sucks.
So if you're a Red Stars fan, you are wearing wave blue tonight.
You're going to be going through some things over the next 48 to 36 hours. So as of this moment, on Friday, September 30th, you are huge San Diego Wave FC fans. And then depending on what happens tonight, you might find yourself massive Washington Spirit fans on Saturday.
Wait, tonight's match is in San Diego?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tonight's match is in San Diego.
I was hoping that would mean like home team's going to at least
maybe
grab a draw there, but we're saying...
maybe, but they're they don't have anything to play for. There's a tough availability report.
Yeah, I think that they're going to put out their best 11 that they have available. I think because they're trying to get a home game. But I think
so.
That
They're in 4th right now.
Yeah,
going into that, but it's funny all the mathematically speaking, we hate math here, but because mathematically speaking, they also have a shot for the Shield. But it's like the math around that is they would need to not only defeat North Carolina Courage, but Portland also have to lose their game. So do OO Reign.
Right.
And they not only would have to beat the Courage, but they would have to beat them by something like 15 goals.
I gotta tell you, it's something to play for if you ask me.
Guess,
I don't know. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Who is going to be the San Diego Wave player that comes in and scores 15 goals in one game?
It's got Jaden Shaw. The team.
Yes,
she's gonna score 1 goal for each year she's been alive, which is 17.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Watch it.
Yeah.
Watch it happen tonight.
Yeah.
That'll
Paramount
happen.
Plus, baby.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's gonna be it's gonna be madness. I'm sure. You look, it's the final match weekend of everything. But again, yes, these things need to happen. There are certain things that need to happen on top of the Chicago Red Stars taking the pitch on Sunday and going out there and getting a win.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be an interesting game no matter what, to be honest. Like, I think the Angel City, not only in standings, but I think in actuality, I think these two teams are probably pretty competitive with one another. We saw them play once. I think, what was that? The 1-0 loss to Angel City in LA.
I will say this. In the lead up to this game, there was some pre-match game availability. Chris Petrucelli and Aaron Wright were on that call. And I will say something very interesting that came out of it, chatting with the two of them and asking the two of them specifically about that previous game where it was 1-0. Aaron Wright was very cool and honest and open and said, you know what, that was a game where we ended that game with a 1-0 loss and we were in the locker room pissed about it.
Yeah.
That they knew that they had let a result get away and they were like, it's going to come down to this final game.
Right.
So I appreciated the honesty and opening in that. So it's like, I would imagine that if that's something that they've been carrying since that previous match against Angel City, maybe they want to come out here and perhaps take it to them. But there's going to be some other factors that come into play. And I'm not just, talking about the fact that there's other teams that need to help Chicago with this path. But they're going to be without Bianca Cintry. They're going to be without Zoe Moore. So maybe let's actually talk about
let's talk about what we're going to see
in this game. I also, asked Aaron Wright how she's feeling because she's someone who's had to deal with coming on and off of the availability report this year. We saw her go about 50 minutes or so in that game against Portland Thorns, and she had a good laugh about it in the media availability. She said, listen, even if I was like 50%, I would tell you I'm 100%.
Well, my thought, this is a really good question from Kristen, which is what's going to happen with the defense. And
shout out to Kristen.
And straight up, who
do we think will take the center back role placing Zoe Morse? Disappointed that she's not going to get the Iron Woman title this year, though she deserves it.
Agreed.
Yeah, Kristen, hard agree.
Big agree. But I also think this is this is what I think is going to happen based on having covered this team for a long time, is I think that Milazzo is going to slide central. I think that Wright and Kowalski are going to be on either side, and I think Wright is going to play the whole 90 minutes because they don't have anybody else.
They literally don't have anybody else.
So she's gonna do it. She's gonna gut it out and salute to that.
Yeah. I have feelings about it.
Yep.
I think again we're talking about players and needing to have the appropriate supports in place. I don't think this is one of those scenarios in which it's been provided.
Yep. But there's one thing we know about these Red Stars that have been around for a while, though. They'll leave it all out there.
Their literal legs apparently fall off, and that's an interesting place to be at.
And then for wingback, I think it will depend on Hill's availability.
Yeah.
Hip stuff doesn't go away in a week, so I don't know if that's just a pain management issue or if they're trying not to aggravate something to make it worse. That seems to me like a player that is going to need an off season to sort of figure out, because she was dealing with hip stuff at the beginning of the season as well. And so usually with hip,
I've got a lot of hip stuff in my closet.
Cool.
Yeah.
Can you help?
Like you guys
can you help out? Yeah, some
things
cool hip stuff.
I just
like
gear.
pretty hip. Yeah. Hill needs to work on that, right? It's wear and tear. It's fatigue. It's bone. It's the joint either being able to handle the workload or not. And so like I said, I don't know if she's going to be ready to go. Sarah Lubert not being, I also assume is not 100% still, despite not being on the AR this week.
We're just going to assume that there's at least 4 potential starters
for at wingback
for this weekend that are absolutely not 100%.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
going into this match,
including Pew has sort of a weird negotiation through the next couple of weeks as well, because if Chicago does make playoffs, that extends her season. They've got the 2 U.S. games, and then they've got theoretically a playoff game on the other side of that. And, I don't want to raise alarm bells where there aren't any, but I think that it's also just because her level of explosivity is so high that even her not at her highest level of explosivity is not a problem, but it just might not all be there, and she's got to negotiate that as well. So I think the defense is going to be those three, because I think that's all that they have. And then for wingback, I think we'll probably see Aguilera for sure. And then it's more just like, can Hill play? Can Lubert play? Because I don't think, because they have no one else to play in the 3-back, it's not like they can put Wright out there. So it's very limited. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a short bench. It's gonna be
Sarah Griffith, wing back.
Yeah, it's gonna be a real short.
Ava
bench.
Cook,
yeah,
wing back.
That's where we're at this point in the season. Just trying some stuff. We're seeing
Yuki Nagasato, wing back.
No, what are you talking about? Outside back. Let's just get all crazy. Let's just get crazy with it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. We'll see if Morgan Gautreaux gets another start in this game. I
hope so. She looked good.
Yeah, she looked great. Asked Petroselli about that, and it's great to have her back at this point in the season. Erin Wright gave really good perspective as a player. She said, "Listen, Gautreaux is just a player that is going to make your team better when she's out there, and not only that, has this sort of cool, calm, collected presence that kind of, can wrangle in a team if they find themselves kind of reeling. And now more than ever, they really do need that.
So this is maybe a good time then. We've been trying, I hope, effectively to kind of talk about what we're seeing like on the field and what we've seen from the players and sort of how the arc of the season has gone on the field. Yeah. But I do think we should talk about the other stuff going on this week in the context of like the ESPN documentary that's coming out.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
And the Sally Yates report that is, I think, coming out. They say early October.
I think that's a great idea. Let's wrap up Angel City then.
Yeah.
Let's say that's who we see on the Red Star side of things. That's who we think we're going to see for Chicago. If you're looking at Angel City and maybe their form at this point, who do you want to have like an off game? Who do you not want to have a good game for Angel City?
I feel bad. I like Angel City. I don't really want anybody Angel City not to have a good game.
You have to, Claire.
I know. Like I'm like players are popping up, and I'm like certainly not Simone Charlie. I want her to have a great game.
Amazing game. Yeah. I want her to start.
Yeah. I mean, I think. That's a really good question. I guess if I have to be mean, I'll just say that. I guess the center backs and the defensive midfield.
Yeah,
I think.
Megan Reed's been pretty good for them.
Yeah, and obviously they've got Paige Nielsen back, and she's been doing nice work. But I mean, if Chicago, and they don't really do this, but if Chicago can, I think, disrupt that center back to defensive midfielder avenue, I think that will work well for them. And yeah, I agree. I think McCaskill is another one too, is as a generator, but I also think that Angel City sometimes can bypass the midfield and do fine. So it just depends.
I was going to say, speaking of red cards, McCaskill is a player who's no stranger to those.
Yeah, it's true.
As well.
That's true.
So I think when it comes to kind of like midfield v midfield, if there's someone that they're trying to isolate maybe and frustrate, that perhaps that's the player that they maybe kind of target in terms of their Angel City's midfield trio. But I don't know. We'll see. The Red Stars need absolutely is a transition for you, buddy.
Okay.
The Red Stars absolutely need every single advantage that they can get into this game, and I would also say that includes their intake, whatever they're intaking in this week leading up to the match.
I appreciate you slowing down as you were speaking so that I could slowly get my act together. Just
Cheers.
Yes. Would you say that they might need something as athletic greens?
AG1, baby.
AG1.
Yeah,
AG1 with one delicious scoop. Let's not forget that it's delicious.
Yep.
You're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All of those things. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. It contains less than 1 gram of sugar, which is great. Costs you less than $3 a day. Also great. And, it's been tried out by our very own Sandra Herrera, and she gives a high mark. So
everybody knows that I'm a world-class athlete.
That's right.
And I got to say, The delicious point in there is very important.
Yeah.
Tastes good, makes you feel good. It's all good.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about outside of the match.
Yeah, let's talk. I want to. I think that I would be remiss to ignore it, and I think
there's a ton of things that have happened outside of match day things. I mean, something interesting that happened. I want to show some shout out and show some respect and some admiration to BSG, to Bianca St. George's. She actually made a statement recently coming out of that Portland game, essentially taking accountability for the moment that she flipped the double bird to the sideline official. She posted on her socials that I'd like to address the incident from this past weekend that led to my dismissal from the game against Portland. First, I'd like to apologize to all our young fans who were watching or have seen coverage of the incident and my gesture. I'm disheartened that I've set a bad example of how to behave on or off the field. And I want to emphasize that this is no way for anyone to act regardless of being in a heightened emotional state. I also want to emphasize the importance of being accountable for your actions and taking ownership of your mistakes. I broke the rules of conduct and accept the NWSL disciplinary decision. I'm hurt I won't be able to be on the field with my teammates, but I'm doing my part in helping the team prepare, and I will be in the stands Sunday to cheer them on. So I just wanted to give, bring attention to that for a second for anyone who's joining us live that didn't get a chance to see it. She's obviously knew what it was going to mean moving forward for the team at this point in the season and put out a statement there. And, it's always nice to hear from Chicago Red Stars players, even if it is, some unfortunate something like this. Because something else that's been happening, I think that you've been alluding to it, Claire, is there's been a very interesting perception around, players, I would say, or maybe even the franchise as a whole in regards to the recent ESPN E60 documentary that's going to come out very soon. They're doing an extensive kind of deep dive on the 2021 that took place in NWSL. And there's, within the trailer, it's very compelling. There's a lot of snippets of folks who are being interviewed throughout it. And that, of course, includes coaches who have been terminated from the league after investigative findings. And within this, there was an additional press release that was put out saying, here's interviewees who were and folks who were participating in this particular documentary. And it rattled off a number of names that included, our other colleague in Meg Linehan. It included, PA, Executive Director Megan Berg, but it also listed a bunch of players as well. And a lot of these players were from very specific clubs. So we are hearing from Anashim, who, had spent time with Portland and Paul Riley. And we saw Merritt Mathias, and we saw a number of Washington Spirit players as well. So one of the questions within our live chat here, I think this might be from Alex. Hey, Alex. See Calabrese. Any thoughts on the upcoming ESPN story on the NWSL scandals, which have little mention of Chicago Red Stars? And I think that just, when you're looking even just at the trailer on its own and the fact that you've got players, executive directors, media members within it, I think you're going to wonder, where's Chicago's place in this, as they also were a club in 2021 that had a lot of negative headlines around them. But I think if you've got players who, quite frankly, decline or don't feel comfortable in doing that, I think that's ultimately just sort of kind of how you have to respect it. I would imagine that's the reasoning behind the lack of players participating in it.
Maybe.
But these are assumptions on my part. I don't have any intel that. Do you have intel to that?
I mean, reviews have come out today of the documentary, and I think ultimately the reviews have indicated that it's more of a synthesis of two stories than an overall look. It kind of wraps things up nicely in a bow a little bit. It's very much trying to tell the story of 2021 to audiences that maybe don't follow the league week in and week out. There are issues with that, inherent issues to that, right? Which is that if you're going to, if you're going to approach it in that way, and then you're not going to tell the whole story. And this has been a really interesting conversation this week. Meg Linehan put out a really good conversation with Megan Burke and Jessica Berman and their legal representation today. And this is actually something that's been in the back of my mind a lot, which is scope. Yeah. I think that what we're seeing here, and I think a desire from the fan base, is scope, wide reaching, because so many of these issues go back decades. They go bigger than just NWSL. They go into the youth game. They go into U.S. soccer's stewardship of the entire sport in this country. It goes into norms that are probably seen in other leagues in this country, and beyond. I mean, we're seeing issues not even just in the U.S. And so I think there's going to have to be, what's the right way to put this? Every single thing that comes out. So the E60 and the Sally Yates report, and then subsequently the NWSL's investigation, and in combination with the NWSLPA, are going to have different scopes. And so did I think the ESPN scope was a little disappointing? Yeah, I did. I think that like they're saying in the chat, I think it was Jonathan Tannenwald who reported that Kristen Press and Rory Dames were both reached out to. They both declined. Arnim Whistler was not reached out to. And then they just said, okay, we're limiting scope here. We're just going to do this one thing. And then I think the Sally Yates thing, and we were reminded by this by Burke in that very good piece by Meg, is Sally Yates is going to, and I believe has done a wide-ranging investigation, which is a little bit wider in scope. Yeah. What she publishes is still going to be more limited, though, because there's going to be these decisions of like, what is in U.S. soccer's purview, what is not in U.S. soccer's purview, how far does this go? Are we talking about workplace cultures? Are we talking about other things? And ultimately, U.S. soccer has an investment in the machine continuing to go forward, right? Yep. And then eventually we're going to get the NWSL's and the NWSLPA's investigation. And that is, I think, indicated, again, by this conversation. I'd really recommend subscribe to The Athletic, guys. They do great work. Yep. Shout
out to Meg.
They're going to be wider in scope. They want to push it even wider. They want to talk about how these issues came into place, how the CBA fixes some of these things, but not all of them. They want to give recommendations, and they want to hold the Board of Governors to a high standard. They still report to a board of governors, though, and Arnim, Whistler is theoretically represented on that board of governors. So I have no answers for fans who are looking for wider, nuanced scope of investigation. And
for the Chicago Red Stars,
specifically, yeah. I share the concerns that element is falling through the cracks, I guess, is what I would say.
I would
at this moment, right? With so much that we haven't seen yet.
I would just echo that and include myself in that as well. I think there's, reason for folks to be concerned. Shout out to the question again, Kelly. You're saying that you're Alex's dad. Hi, Alex's dad. Thanks for the question, and it obviously gave us the opportunity to open up the conversation here on this podcast. But I share the same concerns that folks have on that. But the fact that there are, Tannenwald reporting that, there were specific people who were reached out to be part of this documentary and declined. Again, you just unfortunately have to accept that for what it is. I am in agreement, with Claire 100% in that I think it's a dangerous narrative to sort of have around what took place in 2021. I think the concept or the idea of just kind of pointing at it and saying, wow, wasn't that crazy? And let's move on and sort of say that. And sure, I think that's like an interesting way to kind of put it. But the truth of the matter is like, no, we can never actually forget what happened and came out of that. Is there, room to sort of grow from that and build something better, from all of those negative experiences? Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think you get there by acting like this was it. That it's never going to happen again.
Well, I think maybe even my feelings on it are very similar, but even just like, I have no problem with moving on. Yeah. I think the current players want to move on. Yeah. I think it's re-traumatizing for people who went through a lot of this absolutely. To have it constantly being brought up. However, the only way you can actually move on is through a level of internal transparency. Burke was open about this. What she feels that these investigations owe the players is a little bit different than what the investigation owes the public. And then just sort of letting the actual issues come to light. And what we've seen with Chicago from an organizational standpoint, and I'm not, they are not alone in this, that has not happened. Yep. And so there is no moving on if you're not having that amount. I mean, I think accountability is a very catch-all kind of a word, and I think that some people's concept of what accountability looks like is different. Obviously, from Chicago's standpoint, as a club, they were like, well, we said we were sorry. We said that we didn't know. Arnhem took a step back for about a year. He was back in a press release a couple weeks ago, right? And then other people feel like accountability is Arnhem selling the team. And that is very wide ranging, right? And probably the reality of what we're going to get is somewhere in the middle. And I think that's going to be really hard, especially for the people who went through this. And to be honest, like, everybody's level of having gone through it from a fan perspective, even us as media, we went through something, right? To the players themselves, to the staff who were in the office at that time. It's just going to be really, really tough. And I think that is where I'm like, well, my frustration maybe from an emotional place is, if we're making everybody go through this again, what is coming out of it?
Yeah, what's the end game?
Yeah. And that's maybe where I do think that ESPN documentary really does fall short. Yeah. But that's just a piece of media, right? Yeah. The investigations need to do more. And so I hope that the investigations do more.
I do too. And I guess this is to sort of wrap this up, I guess. It's just good to point out, again, that the timeline events of probably this next coming week or so might be very re-triggering to folks
Everybody,
out there.
take care of yourselves. This
make
was
sure
hard.
You're taking care of yourselves. I know Claire and I have had a lot of conversations about this. We're very good about checking in with each other. We talk about this all the time, how we're actually two friends who talk about the Chicago Red Stars versus two people who do a show about the Chicago Red Stars. And we mean that very sincerely. And again, anything that could potentially be re-triggering for any of you out there who watch us or support us or follow the Chicago Red Stars, absolutely 100% take care of yourselves.
And it's a good contextualization for what we're seeing on the field as well, which is, I don't know how much of this, there are a lot of players on the Chicago team that were not here last year, but I think that you never know when those pressures get to you. You never know necessarily if it's bugging you until afterwards. I think that I hope that what we have communicated for this whole show is just, we empathize with the players on the field. We think that they've done actually an exceptional job this year. And this club, though, larger conversation is, if you look at where we were like a year ago to now, you're like,
IDK.
I don't know. Yeah.
No, I'm with you on that. Yeah. Players deserve everything.
Yeah.
And when they get everything, they deserve more.
Yep.
And that's what we're here to say on the show, and we'll keep saying it outside of the show, and that's bottom line. So we want to thank everybody, as always, for joining us on the show today. Go Red Stars. We're going to try to manifest good things for them, as we've been trying to do for this late second half of the season. So hopefully we'll get to talk about a dub.
Go San Diego.
Maybe
go
even
Washington.
A playoff position
go Red Stars,
for Chicago Red Stars. If you've enjoyed everything that we talked about this entire season on this episode specifically, please know that one of the best ways that you can support us is with a CHGO membership. You get access to podcasts, live shows on every single Chicago team. You get some post-game shows. You get access to premium written content for all members at allchgo.com. You get access to merchandise, a free shirt when you become a member, and you, of course, get access to the Discord, the CHGO Lounge. So hit us up with a subscription, and Claire and I will hopefully be back to chat about some more cool Chicago Red Stars things. R.I.P. Coolio.